Good evening, everyone. My name is Eric Eickhoff, and I have the pleasure of serving as the Director of Alumni Operations at John Carroll University. Thank you for joining us this evening for our next installment of A.C.E.S, the Alumni Continuing Education Series. A.C.E.S was established in the spring of 2013 by the Office of Alumni Relations in the spirit of lifelong learning. The program offers enrichment opportunities for alumni and friends through the expertise of members of the John Carroll University administration, faculty, and our alumni community. Over the past year, we've heard from experts on ethics and leadership, the political and economic impact of COVID-19, racial equity and social justice, disruptive technology, neurodevelopment, and communication and marketing, just to name a few. Tonight, we will explore K-12 education and the role it plays within our communities. Tonight is the second of a three-part series, this one focusing on teaching, entitled Zooming Through Crisis. Before I introduce our moderator, I wanted to share a few housekeeping items with you. First, we encourage you to view the program in full screen mode. Additionally, please ensure that you stay muted through the duration of the program. Following the moderator discussion, we'll have an opportunity for questions and answers. Please utilize the chat feature for your questions. We will curate them and ask as many as possible. Thank you. It is now my honor to introduce our moderator for this evening, Margaret Peggy Schauer, PhD. Peggy Schauer is an assistant professor of secondary education at John Carroll University. She is also the program coordinator for teacher education. Dr. Schauer has 20 years of experience in P-12 education as a former teacher and principal in urban schools, both public and parochial. Most recently, she served as the founding principal of JFK Eagle Academy in Cleveland Metropolitan School District and the executive director and principal of Luther Memorial School in Old Brooklyn neighborhood. Dr. Schauer's scholarly interests include research around teacher education, teacher identity development, critical consciousness, and critical race theory. She is currently the principal investigator on a $25,000 grant from the Ohio Dean's Compact and seeks to restore the pipeline of Black, Indigenous, and people of color educators to teacher education in our P-12 classrooms. Peggy, thank you so much for assembling our wonderful panel and program for this evening. The floor is yours.
All right, thank you so much, Eric, for that. Oh, I didn't unmute. One of the things about Zoom, unmute first. So let me start over again. Thanks, Eric, for that great introduction and for the opportunity for us to have a great conversation this evening. And thank you, all of you, for joining us. It is my pleasure to introduce our panelists, and I'm going to introduce them in alphabetical order. And so our first panelist is Miss Sarah Dodd, and Sarah is in her first year in 7th grade social studies at Mayfield Middle School in the Mayfield Heights School District. She graduated from Washington and Jefferson College in 2019 with a bachelor's degree in economics and child advocacy. She then continued on with her education at John Carroll, receiving a master's of education through JCU's school-based program in 2021. Her passion for integrating students' identities into her classroom has motivated her love of teaching and her students' love of learning. Through the continuous use of co-generative dialogues, she collects student feedback and incorporates it into each lesson, adapting the content in a way that is both relatable and meaningful to her students. In addition, she differentiates her lessons in order to accommodate the needs of each child, aid their mastery of learning, and empower their unique voices. So welcome to Sarah.
Thank you for having me.
Our next Sarah, not to be confusing to everybody, we have two Sarahs this evening. So we have Mrs. Sarah Sulik, who graduated from John Carroll in 2015 with her bachelor's degree in early childhood education. Her senior year at John Carroll, she did her student teaching at Robert Jamieson School in the Cleveland Metropolitan School District. She was placed at the kindergarten level and 6 years later is happily at the same school in the same grade. She is passionate about working with students in Cleveland and is excited to continue to do so. So welcome to Sarah Sulik.
Thank you.
Our next panelist is Mr. Andrew Drew Turner, who graduated from John Carroll cum laude in 2019. He was a member of the football team and earned first all-team honors. In 2017, he was awarded the JCU History Department Kerner Scholarship. He enjoyed taking part in many service opportunities while at John Carroll at locations such as St. Martin de Porres High School and Boys Hope, Girls Hope. Drew currently teaches global studies and economics at Walsh Jesuit High School. In addition, he is an assistant coach on the varsity football team. Drew is currently pursuing principal licensure in JCU's educational leadership program. Welcome to Mr. Turner.
Thank you, Dr. Schauer. Excited to be taking part of this evening.
Awesome. And our final panelist is Ms. Brittany Webb. Brittany is an educator at Woodbury Elementary School in Shaker Heights. She earned her bachelor's degree in middle childhood education from John Carroll in 2015 and her master's degree in curriculum and instruction with a specialization in gifted and talented from Cleveland State University. Brittany spearheaded the Woodbury Rising Stars Enrichment Program, designed specifically to increase minority enrollment in advanced mathematics courses within the district by strengthening the mathematical foundation of minority students throughout the school year. Brittany is also a trustee on the Shaker Schools Foundation. So welcome to Brittany.
Hello, everybody. Happy to be here.
Great. So those are our panelists, and I'm going to ask them a series of questions, and I'm going to see if Sarah Sulik, if you can take the lead on our first question this evening. So Sarah, how do you teach kindergartners on Zoom? And for the rest of us, how do you teach when the Zoom cameras are off and the screens are black boxes? What did you learn about yourself and your students during remote teaching? So Sarah, take the lead on that for us.
All right. Yes, I would love to. Thank you. So the first day of teaching kindergarten versus on Zoom felt like the first day of teaching my first year, except John Carroll prepared me well to teach in class with my students present. And but teaching versus Zoom felt like a whole new battle. None of us really knew what to expect, how to do it. So it was kind of comforting knowing that I was not alone in that adventure, that educators all across the world were experiencing the same thing I was. So keeping 5-year-olds' attention on a computer was not the easiest task, but I do have to say I felt like we were as successful as we could be given the circumstances. Each day I would self-reflect on what went well, just like I do in the classroom. What went well, what didn't, what do I need to do different? How do I get these kids to focus on me and not Fortnite or the TV playing in the background, or if they're at daycare, the other kids that are distracting them while they're supposed to be listening to my instructions. So we definitely had a lot of challenges. Another challenge I would say was my attendance issue. I had consistently like 5 students out of 18 that would show up for every class and every day. So having other students come in and join when you already taught something, but that might have been their first day, we were kind of always reteaching and teaching to move students forward as well. So I would say we made teaching as interactive as we could on the computer. So for example, if I was doing a rhyming activity, instead of the kids just sitting there, I'd give like two rhyming words. And if they rhymed, then they would exercise, and you could see them like doing jumping jacks or something. If I said 2 words that didn't rhyme, they would freeze. And so you could also assess that way as well. And then same thing for math, anything we could do counting and get up and get our bodies moving. They really became engaged with that. And 5-year-olds, as we all know, like to share a lot, sometimes too much. So we would go on scavenger hunts throughout their daycare or at their house. So if we were working on the letter S, they would get so long to find as many things in their house that began with this sound. And then they would love to share it. And they were like, oh, I have that too. So making those connections and giving them a chance to really share kept their attention. We also did a lot of I do, the gradual release model. I do, we do, you do. So I would model it, share my screen of my thought process, and then the students would look at it and unmute themselves and share their answers. And then during their independent time, they would complete the activity at home. The one challenge with a lot of others is not all my kids had the same supplies at home. So it wasn't like, okay, bring out your paper and pencil. Some of them would be in the car at daycares, not having those resources available. So you would have to adjust, okay, type the word "the" into the chat, if you can do that, or spell it in the air while others are writing it on paper. So we definitely did a lot of self-reflection of how to make this work the best that we can. So yeah, thank you.
Awesome. You're the saint of Zoom, Sarah. It's awesome. What other comments did the other panelists have on how you approached teaching on Zoom?
So I kind of want to add to that. I think definitely building a relationship with the kids and building connections with them made all the difference. Even just finding the humor when things go wrong, even something as simple as that, being able to laugh at like mistakes, just proved to help build a connection with the kids, to show them that you're learning with them. But also just even simply chatting with the kids, using Zoom, the Zoom chat, and like working with them in breakout rooms. I felt like a lot of kids loved the breakout rooms and they would turn their cameras on, and where I could see them and I could communicate with them. I could talk to them about, their interests and even funny memes. And middle school kids love memes. So connecting with them on their interests and things that they really enjoy, while also finding humor in content or just in the craziness of Zoom, also proved to be very helpful with connecting with the kids and helping them feel more comfortable, kind of showing their faces on Zoom.
One thing that, being on Zoom and online really made me more appreciative of is our school counselors and the work of a lot of our support staff. When in person and when given the opportunity, the school counselors at, I'm sure all of our schools, but specifically at Walsh Jesuit, do a great job of staying on track of kids, being aware of some of the issues that are going on in their lives and being able to relay that important information with their teachers. When we went online, the kids were literally, turning off camera and essentially, metaphorically muting everyone. And it was really hard for our school counselors to be able to keep tabs on and kind of be aware with some of the issues that a lot of our students were dealing with. So one thing that it really made me appreciate is the hard work and the amazing work our school counselors are able to do in recognizing a lot of our students' needs and relaying that to the teachers to allow us to best serve their academic needs in the classroom.
The dreaded camera. So we struggled with getting students to turn their cameras on. There was a conversation amongst administrators and teachers regarding how to maximize engagement. And we talked about the why behind the camera. And we determined that, we listened to the kids. Well, why is your camera off? Well, my hair is not done. I don't want you to see my house. I don't want you to see my room. I have a lot going on in the background. So there were reasons why the cameras were off. And we tried to, listen to the students and tried our best to maximize engagement, whether that be a scavenger hunt, okay? Search around your home and find something that is the color red, or find a comb, or find something that everyone should have in their home. Okay, if you want to quickly turn your camera on and flash your, microwave, then do that. But it was a struggle, But I wholeheartedly agree with Sarah Dodd, that it comes down to building those relationships. You have to build those relationships, whether you're on Zoom or in person, in order for that student to really work and rise to your expectations. So again, it was a struggle with the camera, but giving them a reason to turn on the camera, whether it be a meme or a scavenger hunt, just a getting to know you hour, that's the best way to maximize that engagement.
That's great. And so keeping on the theme of technology, because that has been so much of our lives for the past 2.5 years, I'm going to ask Sarah Dodd if you could take the lead on this question for us. And that question is, what is the role of technology in a post-pandemic classroom, if and when we ever get there? What has worked well and what needs to go? What do we need to stop doing?
So I was very fortunate to to do student teaching actually both hybrid. So we did it with like in person and on Zoom with kids. And I say I was fortunate because I felt like I learned a lot and about how teachers had to adapt to different types of platforms, trying to find new and creative ways of engaging their students, meeting their needs, and also teaching content. So I noticed that at Mayfield, we integrated a lot of different types of platforms. We used many different platforms such as like Google Drive, as well as Pear Deck, Nearpod, Dreambox, Delta Math, tons of different types of platforms. Also, Mayfield began to use Schoology more often, which is a learning management system, and Screencastify, which I know a lot of teachers used during the pandemic to relay directions and go over different types of information so it's easily accessible for students and so they can rewatch it over and over again, especially if they missed a class virtually. And I feel like a lot of things worked, and a lot of things Mayfield kept because Mayfield is very much focused on like self-paced, individualized learning, where we are incorporating the students' interests and their identities into our classes. So I feel like definitely Schoology has been something that is a must and worked really well. We use it every day to put in assignments, directions, daily directions. We use it for grades as well as communicating with students and parents. One thing I love about Schoology is it's very informal. So the students they don't have to write an email to me, and have that, fear that's kind of attached to maybe writing an email, but instead they can just send me a quick message, and they use it for many different things, whether it's to ask me for, about an assignment, or maybe just to show me their ferrets at home. I have a couple students who have pets and they just want to send me a video of their pets, or they see some funny thing online and they want to send it to me. It's very informal, so it keeps us connected. Also, we still use Screencastify a lot, especially going over summative directions. We found that it's really helpful, not just for students who aren't there at school, but also students who need to hear directions repeatedly, also maybe in a chunked format too. So like kind of using Screencastify to go over the directions again. Now we also use a lot of the different platforms like Lexia to kind of help students, excel in their language arts and but at their own pace. Same thing with Dreambox as well. And that is something that we've continued to use. And I've had to think deeply about some things that could go. So it's an interesting, I'm thinking kind of deeply about it. I love Google Drive and I use it often in my social studies classroom. But sometimes if you use one platform heavily, it becomes monotonous and unauthentic for the students. So I feel like, you do want to have like use many different creative platforms, not too many to overwhelm the students, but you also don't want to use the same platform, the same technology over and over and over again. And in social studies, we try and find different ways of doing that, like creating a comic on the Crusades through Google Slides. So where the kids are able to still use their humor and identities, creating their own characters and stories, and incorporating it into their classroom. So there are some platforms that I worry about because they could become monotonous if used too much. Also, any platform that suppresses, I feel like, any student's identities, that doesn't really motivate students. Also platforms that really just measure how well a student is able to understand technology rather than kind of like measuring their growth. I think those types of platforms can go as well. So anything that's just kind of hard and complex for the students to understand, which is kind of just measuring their technological abilities rather than just, are they actually understanding the content? So those types of platforms, I feel like we can, we don't need in the classroom. And also platforms that are not equally accessible to all the students, where, if they're not able to use it at home. And, I feel like we just need to make sure that the platform is, adaptable to all the students' needs, and make sure that they are meeting them where they're at. And then one more thing I want to quickly add, the best way to figure out what technology should stay and go are the kids, talking to them. So, I mean, honestly, I ask them, if I introduce something new, did you like it? Did you not? Why? Why not? We talk about it. And I love when my kids just kind of say, Miss Dodd, this was okay. I'm not a big fan of it. And they tell me why. I like when they're brutally honest about things, and it lets me know that, we try something else. So the students, I feel like, are the best feedback that I can possibly get when thinking about what kind of technology should go in my classroom.
And teaching remotely, or even using technology to teach math was very difficult. We all have heard, oh, math just isn't my thing. Oh, I don't know this new math. So, teaching math remotely was extremely difficult, but it totally changed the way that I teach. I don't believe that, I learned so many different, to use so many different platforms during the pandemic, that I have so many tools in my toolbox. I don't even know which ones to pick up. Do I pick up the wrench? Do I pick up the screwdriver? I have so many things, but I think what I learned the most and what I heard the most from both students and parents was, is there anything on paper? Can we go back to the paper? I like to work my workout on paper. I like to read it again. I want to take my time. So really for me, although I learned so many cool resources and to use so many different platforms, going back to the paper and pencil for me, for math, was an eye opener. I didn't realize, using all of these, the variety of resources that I use, I didn't realize the importance of just a plain old paper and pencil. But, I think that listening to your students and listening to their families and what works best for them is the way to go. Also, technology can aid you in the classroom because it allows you to form different groups. Maybe there's a group working on a spiral activity. Maybe, there's another group working on a partnered activity. And then while you, as the teacher, you can work one-on-one or a small group. So embedding it into your lesson is amazing, but really understanding that, again, listening to the parents and listening to the students on what works best for them is clutch.
Just to add to that quickly, a lot of my students who have never had technology and didn't have access to one-on-one technology in Cleveland. So having the one-on-one technology and giving them a hotspot really provided an equal opportunity for my students in particular. And that was a great change that I saw. Going back to what Miss Brittany was saying about there is a time for paper and pencil, and we mostly use paper and pencil in our classroom with technology adapted appropriately. But also some students who do well on paper and pencil might struggle with technology and vice versa. So it could be used as a great differentiation tool in the classroom if you use it appropriately.
Thanks. That's a great conversation. Moving to our next question that I'm going to throw out to Ms. Webb, if you could lead us off with this one. Is learning loss real? And how did the pandemic highlight inequalities in student learning, both academic and socio-emotional? How have mental health concerns impacted our classrooms, and what supports are available or needed?
Okay. Where do
I just gave, that's an easy one, right? Off you go.
So learning loss is absolutely real. But I think that it's so much more than academics that was lost. You know, when it comes to academics, we know that our public school system, even before COVID, has been deeply inequitable. We already know that marginalized students were at a disadvantage before COVID. However, the pandemic has widened the achievement gap for our low-income students, our students of color, and our students with disabilities. With students essentially losing, you know, at least a year of learning. When you think about the students that were completely disengaged, they never turned their cameras on, they never participated in the chat, they didn't turn in any homework. So, you know, taking that into consideration, there was a lot lost. You know, and then upon our return, you know, this results in student disengagement, school work avoidance, and then worst case scenario, school dropout. I mean, I can really go on for days, but, you know, in addition to the academics, school districts in impoverished communities are hurting even more because, you know, they're unable to pay for technological resources that you know, advantaged communities have. And this technology or these resources essentially help students either maintain or regain learning that was lost. I mean, the socio-emotional aspect, if you think about it, I read an article, and I can't remember where, just about how the child abuse reports had declined. But you know, the article was saying how there's less eyes on these students, right? You don't interact with the teacher, you don't interact with the school bus driver, you don't interact with people on a day-to-day basis. So there aren't people checking in on these students. I mean, what do we need? You know, well, we all need help, you know? Families need help. They need help with childcare. They need help with tutors. They need help with, you know, they need counseling to deal with loss due to COVID-19, deal with stress from, you know, maybe people losing their jobs, family members losing their jobs, and grief. You know, districts, they need help dealing with teacher burnout, which is real. They need help hiring paraprofessionals to support the teachers in the classroom. You know, we need supplies, we need substitutes. I mean, you know, the list can go on and on. But most importantly, I think school districts need an effective plan to address the learning that was lost, as well as a plan to get students caught up. You know, I was listening to a podcast on NPR, and the speaker was speaking about a generation of uneducated. And would we go that far to say that I wouldn't say, the entire generation, but we have to start addressing that, yes, learning loss is real. These children are going to grow up and become workers in some sort of work, in some sort of field. So the sooner that we can, the sooner that we can own up to it, recognize it, and start to fix it, I think that's when we'll start seeing some change, some true change. But yes, learning loss is totally real. Absolutely.
I think one other thing that COVID brought about to, the most vulnerable, subset of people in our society, our students and our children, is, we take them at such an important time in their life where they're, depending on their age, they're discovering who they are, right? They're learning how to socialize. They're learning to develop good habits. They're learning how to show empathy and sympathy. They're learning how to, grow personally in whatever aspect of their life. And you took a lot of that away, right? And as Brittany was saying, these kids, they needed guidance. They needed to, have oversight. They need, the leadership and the guidance of, the people they spend the most time with outside of their family, and that's their teachers. And that was all taken away. And the support that they got at home was, very different based on the situation. You may have parents who are unable to supervise them because they're working jobs. You may have a wide variety of, of environments within their home that, ultimately affected their ability to socialize, their ability to grow, emotionally, spiritually, whatever it might be. And all that was ripped from them. I think about the students who I saw in my own class who were just starting to come out of their shell. I think of my freshmen who, had a hard time adjusting to high school, whether it be academically or socially, just starting to come out of their shell. And then they're told they have to go home for the indefinite future. What that does to you, psychologically, and what it does for your own personal growth. We see a lot of students who have really missed out on those opportunities during the COVID, lockdowns and online learning, periods. And, those are large issues that are still looming for, I'm sure, all of our students.
And Drew, you raised a good point, like the interpersonal skills, they lack those interpersonal communication skills. And it's like, upon the return, that anxiety is there, the apprehension to take my hat off, take my hood off. It's almost like they were in a safe bubble behind the camera, microphone, and now we're asking them to come out, just dismantle the brick wall and make connections, genuine connections with your peers. And they're struggling. Yeah, they're struggling.
I would say, just to add to that too, if you think about it, the third graders right now haven't had a normal school year since kindergarten. So that's when that transition in first grade going hybrid and all this started. So being a kindergarten teacher, my students haven't had a normal year since they were 2. And so that means a lot of my students didn't go to preschool. A lot of my students didn't go to daycares. So they don't know how to socialize appropriately, handle conflict, talk, have those conversations with their peers appropriately. Not to mention us wearing our mask. They can't read social emotional cues. They can't read my facial expression. Oh, I gotta, Ms. S, she's gonna give me that look. I gotta get it together a little bit. They can't see I'm happy, sad, So I feel like that alone has been a struggle, and something as simple as that.
And I think you're right. Even, walking in a line, right? Or, school appropriate behavior. Remaining in your seat for a certain amount of time. If you have like a classroom rug, okay, everyone's sitting on their mat, not getting up when you want to get up and going to, just asking permission, just those day-to-day school behaviors, they don't know. We're having to teach them. And, I feel like as adults, we take those minor things for granted, because we assume that, well, you're old enough to know, you just know. But no, that goes back to that learning that was lost. So yeah.
So moving from that and all the supports and all the things that our students need, what lessons were learned? And Drew, I'm going to throw this question to you. What lessons were learned that can help us navigate a new normal in our K-12 schools?
Well, first, let me say, and I'm sure this is the general consensus that we all feel, is that, we at Walsh Jesuit believed and still believe that our job as educators is best accomplished in person, right? And the responsibilities that we have to educate our students are best done in person. So, where do we go from here? I think what we realize is how important that sense of community is in our students' lives. Obviously students are coming in with a wide variety of life experiences, a wide variety of support at home, a wide variety of emotional, social, and academic needs. And that sense of community, I think was lost during COVID. So the question is now, how do we assess the community that we build in our schools? How do we establish them if we need to? And how do we build on it? During the COVID lockdowns, our students lost the ability to do things like engage with their peers, go to large school assemblies, have school pride, at our religious schools, like Walsh, to be able to go to masses or go on retreats. So how do we restore or rebuild some of those things that we have lost? And that's one thing that we've been able to slowly do at Walsh over the past school year, is start to offer some of those things again. Some of the things that allow students to develop those interpersonal skills, like we've mentioned, allow, one of the unique aspects of a Catholic school is, growing spiritually and religiously. And that's something we've been able to do through our ability to go back to Mass, offer our Kairos retreat for students, and kind of slowly reestablish that normal that we knew before the start of COVID. So I think it all comes down to, creating that sense of community where students can trust those around them, where they can feel that sense of belonging and, know that when they go to school, there's acceptance and there's the challenge to, make them the best student they could be, the best thinker they can be, the best friend they can be. Those are all things that were really, really difficult to accomplish when online and not in that supportive environment of a school.
I completely agree. So like with the middle school students, talking with a lot of the kids who were remote last year, talking with them this year, they told me that they felt isolated last year. They feel like they did not connect with their friends. They lost a lot of friends, and they feel so fortunate to be back and have established a community, feel, awesome to actually establish, a bond with their teachers, and, and actually, get to connect with each of the people within their classes as well. So, I mean, virtually, you try your best to try and connect with your students. You show them the quirky sides of you, and, they show you the quirky sides of them too. But, really you get to know your kids, in person, and building that community with them is so very important. A positive community where they do feel completely accepted. They feel comfortable to, share their voices with you, and they do not feel, as self-conscious as, most middle school students do have some sort of self-conscious, aspects to them because it's a part of their development, but still they don't feel as self-conscious. They feel as if they're accepted and welcomed into that environment. And that is so important. I feel like that is something that I have learned as a teacher.
Totally agree. I think that what I've learned in particular is the importance of school, like not just the academics, not just the education piece, but how we're really addressing the whole child, right? So whether it be safety, whether it be food, whether it be, counseling, whether it just be developing the friendships and the relationships. And I realized that, yes, remote learning was remote learning. Some kids learned something, but the best option or the best way to support students and families is the educational system. Not just public, not just private, just really allowing students to develop into their authentic selves with adults, learning organizational skills, learning interpersonal skills, and learning just life lessons, just learning, in different aspects of their lives. So I think that is what I learned most. But what can help us navigate a new normal? I think it's just to focus on how truly blessed we are to be here, right? We're here and we can, potentially change how we educate students. And we know that relationships, a variety of modalities, and the brick and mortar is the way to support students, the most. So.
Those are fantastic responses. And I'm sure this is coming across to everybody on this call tonight, is just the passion and dedication. You can hear it in your voices, and how much you have gone through and overcome on behalf of our kids, and that you've done it. And so our final official question, until we open it up to questions, and I think I'll send it back to our kindergarten teacher, because we learn everything in kindergarten. If we just did things more like kindergarten, the world would be a better place, right, Ms. Dulick? So my question is that with all of this and the hard times that we've had over the past couple of years, there's a teacher shortage that's looming out there. Now, my student teachers who are on this call right now are pretty excited about that, because they would like some jobs, but they would also like some colleagues to work with. So, and it's possible that 50% of educators across the country are going to leave the classroom in the next few years. So my question to all of you guys is, how are you taking care of yourself? What are you doing for self-care? What supports do you have, or what supports do you wish you had? So Ms. Zulik, tell us from the kindergarten world.
Well, I wish I learned that answer in kindergarten, because it's a lot harder question than you think it is. I think something that I had to do is prioritize and come up with that to-do list, that never-ending to-do list, but don't worry about getting it all done in a set amount of time. Because if you have this to-do list, you spend all your time lesson planning, making these centers for your students, but you're run down, you're not going to be the best version of yourself for your students, and that's going to have the impact on them. So that to-do list will always be there. You need to take time for yourself. And I'm like getting emotional thinking about it, because I know I need to work on it. I'd be lying if I said this has not been one of the most challenging years I have had with student teaching in 7 years. It has been difficult, and you do need to find time to watch Netflix and not feel guilty that you don't have your laptop in front of you lesson planning for tomorrow. You need a little break. So focus on yourself, find what makes you happy and do it. Go to lunch with your friends, even if you have to make centers for tomorrow. You have to do things because, like I said, if you don't take care of yourself, you're not going to be able to be there for these kids that do need you. So that's one of the things that I'm trying to do myself. I also have found courage and consideration to politely say no sometimes if things are overwhelming and I just can't handle one more thing. So find that courage and consideration to say, I cannot handle this right now. Because like you said, the teacher and sub shortage is a real thing. We miss planning periods. We get a 40-minute planning period. A lunch period, a 50-minute planning period. You're not guaranteed that 15-minute planning period with no subs. A lot of times in our case, we have to cover classes that don't have subs. So on top of having kindergartners, I might have a group of 6th graders in my classroom as well. So that gets tiring in itself. And there's no time provided that can make up for lost time. And I think that's one of the reasons why we were able to be so successful in teaching through the pandemic through Zoom is every Wednesday, Cleveland had an asynchronous day where we had our meetings. And then we had time to not just, okay, that was the meeting, but like to go and reflect on that meeting and do what we needed to get done to be successful, learning this new thing. So we need time as teachers. What that may look like, where you might find that, I'm not sure, but we need time. I think those are some of the big things. And also we need help, and it's okay to ask for help. A lot of our students we talked about the social emotional aspect of loss and things. And on top of that, the trauma that some of the students are going through at home. When you have a whole classroom, they just need someone to talk to. So maybe not coming through with a checklist and making sure I have all this stuff, but talk to a small group, ask them what they're doing might be helpful for me, when I'm testing a group over here and 20 other kindergarteners over there. So support in that way, I think would be really helpful and help teachers and the students hand in hand. Lastly, I think we need to make teaching fun again. Like, yes, we have standards, we have a curriculum, but if you think about your favorite memories of school, it probably wasn't that reading lesson where your teacher was teaching from that book, but it was probably a fun art project or where you got to work with some friends. So let's lower some of these expectations and our to-do list that we're handing our teachers. We don't need more to do. We need time to do and make teaching fun for our students.
It wouldn't be right if the football coach in me didn't come out and I didn't reference football in some way, shape, or form. So I'm going to reference back in 2018 when the Cleveland Browns were on Hard Knocks. There's a segment where the Browns wide receiver Jarvis Landry was speaking to some of the other wide receivers in the room and says, "What is your why?" He goes, "Why are you here? Why are you doing this?" And I think on our hardest days, when we feel burnt out and, whether or not, we're taking time for ourselves or we're really struggling, I think we have to remember, what is our why? Why are we doing this? We didn't have to do this. No one forced us into teaching. And for me, it's a couple of reasons. Number one, it's to change lives. It's to develop good humans, not just good students, but to develop good human beings. And also for me personally, it's to be the teacher or the coach that I had, or maybe some of us didn't have, right? And to be that guidance, to be that individual, to help develop students and to develop young people. And I think on our hardest days, we have to remember that. We have to consider that, and it's something that's so important, and ultimately at the heart of why we do what we do.
I think that, I would agree with Sarah, the power of no, just saying no, without without an explanation. I'm not available for that. And then protecting your time. I have taught math for 7 years, and I am a very hardworking teacher, as I'm sure we all are. But I had to scale back the amount of work that I was taking home, because I could easily spend 2-3 hours a night grading, planning, prepping. And I just said, you know what? I'm going to have to cut the to-do list short. And I will assign myself a couple of things. And once those are done, they're done. And if they don't get done, well, hey, there's always tomorrow. So I think the power of no and protecting your time is the biggest thing that I would say that would support teachers.
As a newer teacher, I'm kind of absorbing all this information myself, because this is my first official year of teaching. And I have noticed that, oh my goodness, there's some days I come back and I'm so tired and I feel almost selfish if I take time for myself. And I have that looming thought in my mind of no, I should be doing this for my students. I need to be planning lessons. So I'm absorbing all this information and taking it in. And, as a new teacher, it is hard to say no sometimes to, different, jobs and responsibilities and things that are added to the plate. So that's something I know I'm working on, and something that I've actually done to kind of help, take care of myself is at Mayfield, I started a crochet club with my students, and crocheting is one of my favorite things to do. It is my relaxing time. It is my favorite hobby. And, sharing that part of my life with my students and seeing how it ignites a passion in them too. Some of my students, and just sitting and connecting with them that way, where I'm taking care of myself, but also connecting with my kids, seems to be, very, very immensely helpful for me. But I will admit that I am still learning how to take good care of myself, since this is my first year. And there are some days I am so worn out. So I appreciate all the guidance from all of you. So thank you.
And everybody on this call and at home, you should take your one hand like this and your other hand like this and give yourself a little hug, because y'all deserve it and we all need to take care of ourselves, right? So thank you for those responses. I'm going to try to combine two really great questions that came into the chat and throw it your way, guys. We have a question from one of our university supervisors, the great Carrie Seidman, who some of us may have had as a university supervisor, and also from Kaylee Kelly. And they're coming from the two opposite sides of the spectrum of teacher educators. Carrie's question is really looking at how did you support some of your colleagues in the classroom who might have had less experience with technology, maybe a little older, we're trying to log in for the first time and trying to navigate that. How are you able to support those colleagues? And then Kaylee's question is coming at it as somebody who's going to be coming into the field, now knowing what you know, what is some advice that you can give to her and some of our teachers on the call who are going to be entering into the classroom? So if you guys can kind of take it from both angles, what did you do to support your colleagues who are more senior in the building, and what advice would you give to those coming in? Sarah Dodd, I'm looking at you, so off you go.
So I know during student teaching, when we were doing hybrid learning, so where we had many kids online and many kids in the classroom, there were many teachers that had trouble with Zoom or kind of screen sharing or anything like that. I would get a phone call in my mentor teacher's classroom, and then I would be like, I'm on it. And then I would just go over to the classroom and help out. I actually, loved doing that, because it kind of challenged me to see, oh, can I solve this issue? And then I kind of remember, if we're able to figure it out together, kind of remember for the next time. So I felt like I was able to grow and help my colleagues grow, with technology. And then in regards to advice, so that one's kind of hard for me to think about. I mean, just, don't be afraid to make mistakes. Mistakes happen and it is okay. Find humor in the mistakes, move forward, and don't be afraid to laugh at yourself once in a while. I know that's just something that I've learned to do. And then my kids laugh along with me and we all have a fun time. So don't worry about mistakes. You'll get through it and everything will be fine. So you can do it and believe in yourself. So that's really what I got to say.
But I think, and I think that it's important to highlight collaboration. I'm very fortunate to have always worked with a team or a partner. So, planning together, walking through your lessons, role playing as a student and as the teacher, try role play any mishap that could happen. And then, like Sarah said, if something comes up, give your colleague a call. This is acting up. I can't get this to work. And just having that support, from a colleague or a mentor is so important. I think going into a district as a new teacher, shout out to Julia Rose, my student teacher. She is amazing. Sorry. Her and I were having a conversation and I said, one of the interview questions that you could ask would be to ask about how much time the district provides or the building provides you to collaborate with other teachers. Like I said, I've always been able to collaborate with other teachers multiple times a day. And it just, research shows that teachers are more effective when they're a part of a team. So I think that having that support from your colleagues will help in situations like that.
Lastly, I would like to add too is you're not alone. That if you're feeling like you're a bad teacher that day because this and this happened, you're not. You could it's so interesting how many people can relate. Not even just in your building, but even having this conversation right now with teachers all across, and even on Facebook support teacher groups I'm in, we're all going through the same thing. So you might feel like you're a failure one day, but you're not, and just keep going, reflect, move on, try to do better, and if it'll all fall into place. But don't beat yourself down.
Fantastic advice, Sarah. And for all of our panelists, thank you guys so much for sharing your experiences, your wisdom, and just being engaged in this conversation. It's so appreciated. I'm going to turn it back over to Eric, who is going to close us out for this evening.
Well, thank you again so much for joining us, Sarah, Drew, Brittany, and Peggy. We truly appreciate your willingness to be with us and share your expertise. No doubt the past 2 years have been a challenge for everyone, but especially for our teachers. And as a parent, I am eternally grateful for the work that you do with our youth. And I don't think we say thank you enough to our teachers. So thank you. And we are truly grateful and appreciative that you are members of our John Carroll community. Before we conclude, I'd like to share with you a few other opportunities for you to take advantage of this spring through the Office of Alumni Relations. We have 2 more programs during the month of February for you to enjoy. Tomorrow, February 24th, we will host a program focusing on the future of engineering at John Carroll. And on Monday, February 28th, our Chicago Alumni Chapter will host a panel discussion focusing on current trends and topics in human resources. On April 7th, we'll host our 3rd Conversations in K-12 Education, this time focusing on school counseling, the challenges and needs of during the pandemic. Those 3 programs will all be hosted via Zoom. Also, please mark your calendars for April 19th and April 20th as John Carroll celebrates Founders Day and hosts its 4th annual Day of Giving. These programs bring members of our community together to celebrate all that makes John Carroll special and to ensure that future generations have an impactful Carroll experience in the Jesuit tradition. You can learn more about and register for all of our upcoming programs, including our Alumni Author Series, Scholarly Luncheons, our A.C.E.S programs, and our Alumni Spotlight events at jcu.edu/alumni. Additionally, we invite you to view recordings of our previous programs on the John Carroll University Alumni Association YouTube channel. To view our extensive library, search for John Carroll University Alumni on YouTube. Finally, please consider a charitable gift to John Carroll in support of our students, our outstanding faculty, and our entire campus community. If you've already made a gift this year, thank you so much for your generosity. If you have not, please join me in supporting John Carroll so that we can continue to deliver an outstanding education for our current and future Blue Streaks. You can make a donation by visiting jcu.edu/give. Thank you again for joining us. Take care, be well, stay safe, and onward on John Carroll.